Could we see more significant change to the Calgary Flames, including pursuing top free agent Taylor Hall? Could the Ottawa Senators be trading for a goalie? Plus, we also have the latest updates on the Washington Capitals head coaching search and the Florida Panthers GM search and more. And it's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as you can see, we're again doing an outdoor video. This time we're in historic downtown Fredericton, New Brunswick, with the St. John River behind me. Of course, I'm down by the waterfront here. There's a marina not far by, actually up on the deck of one of our lighthouses down here. Very beautiful, picturesque area, so I hope you enjoy the scenery throughout this video. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Let's kick things off with the Washington Capitals. Obviously, we have some updates from Pierre LeBrun and other insiders talking about what coaching candidates could be being considered. We did get comments from GM Brian McClellan indicating that he certainly is going to be looking for an experienced coach to replace recently let go head coach Todd Reirden. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video discussing the release of Reirden, obviously, they haven't had a lot of experienced coaches during the tenure of Alexander Ovechkin, minus Barry Trotz. So obviously there's some top guys on the market, including Peter Laviolette, Gerard Gallant, Bruce Boudreau, and Mike Babcock, and others that are certainly interested in working again. Now we heard Sportsnet analyst and former NHL GM Brian Burke weigh in on his thoughts, and he gave the impression that he feels Gerard Gallant would be a great choice for the Capitals, who's certainly a very demanding coach, somebody who's known also as a player's coach, could be very fair, good communicator, had a lot of success in the past between his time as an assistant coach. He had a lot of success as a head coach in junior, coached in Florida, coached in Vegas. Could be a very good choice, but he's going to have other options as well. And I know obviously the Seattle franchise is going to be looking to hire a head coach here in the near future. Is going to be talking to probably a lot of the same similar candidates. So we'll see how the Capitals proceed, but we do have confirmation that they certainly want to go with somebody a little bit more experienced. They kind of expect more of this group while they try to win with guys like Ovechkin and Backstrom before their time is up here, while they feel they still have a bit of a championship window open. Another note here on the Washington Capitals head coaching position is they did indicate they want to have this looked after and a new candidate hired before the NHL Draft comes up in October. Now, we also have some updates on the Panthers GM job. As I mentioned, we talked before about some candidates that were being interviewed. We have a few more to add to that list. Of course, previous candidates include Mike Fuda, formerly the Los Angeles Kings. We also mentioned Scott Mellanby, the Montreal Canadiens, John Ferguson Jr., and a few others, while we also have some more names, including Kevin Weeks, drafted by the Panthers, former NHL goaltender, current NHL analyst, works primarily for NHL Network. So there's certainly an interesting choice there. It's been rumored for some time he's been wanting to get into some type of job like that. Also, former NHL goaltender Sean Burke, who also works with the Habs as a scout, obviously had an opportunity to be the GM for Team Canada for the most recent international competition. So obviously, Burke's certainly been looking for an opportunity to move up in that regard as well. So another great candidate, as well as assistant GM in St. Louis, Bill Armstrong. Armstrong's worked there for some time and looking for an opportunity, and Elliot Friedman believes all three of these guys did receive recent interviews here to be considered for the Panthers job. We also have word that the Columbus Blue Jackets forward Brandon Dubinsky, who's been out of the lineup for a significant period of time on long-term injury reserve with a chronic wrist ailment, likely will never play again. He still has a little bit of time in his contract, but GM Jarmo Kekalainen basically confirmed that he's not expected to return. Basically, he's more or less considered retired now. Obviously, the Jackets will continue to get long-term injury reserve relief from the salary cap if need be from the contract for its duration, but another player who's not expected to return. Of course, round 2 of the NHL playoffs has been underway. We have 3 of the 4 series have one game in the books already. We had the Dallas Stars defeat the Colorado Avalanche. That was certainly very interesting, entertaining, high offense game. The Stars' top players certainly came to play. We saw an injury to Philip Grubauer, which is bad news for the Avalanche, but Pavel Francouz has certainly played well as well during his time in the playoffs. So the Avalanche had 2 goalies playing well, so that's a good issue. It's really unclear when Grubauer's going to be able to return. It looked like it was a groin injury and looked like he was in significant pain. Couldn't really put much weight on one of his legs going down the tunnel there. So that's certainly not good news for the Avalanche, but obviously they'll come back strong in game 2, trying to get more offense and kind of boost their odds of winning here, and even the series up against the Stars. In the other 2 series, we saw the Bruins defeat the Lightning with a 3-2 score. The Bruins were up 3-0 for the most part, leading that game, and certainly with a better team for majority of it. Victor Hedman scored both Tampa goals late to make it somewhat interesting, but obviously Tampa's still missing Steven Stamkos, and John Cooper basically said to stop asking about updates, that it's really not clear when he's going to be available. And obviously without their captain, one of their top players, that's certainly not good, but they've done well without him so far. So we'll see how they can bounce back against Boston. But clearly they're going to have to play better than they did in Game 1 to make that more of a series, or the Bruins very well might be heading back to the conference finals here yet again. Now, in the other series last night, we saw the Vegas Golden Knights really thump the Vancouver Canucks with a 5-0 score. Jacob Markstrom ended up getting pulled for Thatcher Demko. Overall, Vegas, this clearly looked like they were the better team, more experienced. Many of those guys, they've been with the team since the beginning, obviously had a chance to go to the Stanley Cup Finals in year 1. Gained a lot of valuable experience. They've since added more depth and more scoring power. Obviously, we saw guys like Marchessault and Smith and Stone, Pacioretty all play really well. So clearly, Vegas seems to be the more experienced, deeper, stronger team in this case. We'll see if the Canucks can bounce back to make it more entertaining. Regardless of what happens with Vancouver, though, they can certainly be proud of their efforts. They've had a great playoff so far and made some terrific progress with a lot of their top young players. Now, as I mentioned as well, there's some reports that the Ottawa Senators could consider trading for a goaltender this offseason. A recent report from Bruce Garriock indicates that Pierre Dorion could make that consideration. Right now, it looks as though they're going to be going with a tandem of Anders Nilsson and Marcus Högberg, but obviously the health of Anders Nilsson long-term certainly has some question marks around it. He missed a ton of time due to concussion symptoms, hasn't played in a really long time, so it's really unclear what his future holds. He is under contract for another year, so theoretically, between him and Högberg, they should be able to hold down the fort. I mean, the Senators are not expected to be, taking some major steps forward this year. They should be better than last year, but still they're ways away from being a playoff contender. But Garriock mentions that they could go after a more experienced veteran netminder because there's going to be plenty on the market through trade and free agency. And clearly he feels that trade is more likely than free agency, given the ones that are free agents are going to be looking for longer term, more expensive deals, and doesn't make sense for the Senators to go down that road right now. But he did mention the Sens should be at least in consideration for talking to a team like the Penguins, who are expected to move Matt Murray. We did see comments from Jim Rutherford indicating there's already been some dialogue, already been some interest in that. They very well will have a good idea here soon what teams are willing to pay so they can decide what their future holds between the pipes. But obviously Matt Murray would be a potential guy there, but the Sens have so many prospects, goalies in their system. I'm not really sure that trading for a guy like Murray really would be the greatest solution, but certainly understand their need to get a veteran in the mix. I mean, you got teams like Carolina with Mrazek and Reimer who might decide to make a move, so one of them could be available. And you have some other teams out there as well, including Colorado, who I just mentioned. They very well could decide. They were also linked to Matt Murray, and you saw the Minnesota Wild's name come up recently in Matt Murray talks too. So there could be other goalies become available as a domino effect. So the Sens will have lots of options out there to make a trade. They have tons of draft picks. As I mentioned before, I expect the Sens to be very active in the 2020 NHL Draft. They're not expected to use all those picks. They very well could use some of those picks to make an acquisition, and they have lots of prospects that could give up a good prospect and a pick to really solidify goaltending situation. Obviously, Craig Anderson likely heads into retirement here. He's currently at least the best goaltender the Sens have had in recent years. Now, also I want to talk about the long-term future of the Calgary Flames, and could they pursue top free agent forward Taylor Hall and also trade forward Johnny Gaudreau. Now, we talked about Gaudreau yesterday. I have a little bit more information to add to that. There's been numerous articles coming out about the Flames from a variety of NHL writers in the last couple of days since the Flames were eliminated, and obviously there's many that feel that Gaudreau hasn't played his last game in a Flames uniform, but obviously there's been a lot of talk that the Flames are very interested in bringing home Calgary native Taylor Hall via free agency. Hall's made it clear in various interviews that he's more interested in winning right now. He's acknowledged that he might not get as much money as he thought he would have prior to this last season or prior to the NHL pause because of everything gone on, lost revenue and COVID-19 and all that's impacted everything. So he's more interested in winning, and as Elliot Friedman mentioned before, he could be a prime candidate to even consider a shorter term deal to make that happen as well. And obviously the Calgary Flames are a team who really has a decent foundation, and that Hall might see as a long-term solution to getting himself into a regular playoff picture and having a shot at a Stanley Cup. And of course, it could depend on what other moves the Flames make, but there's been a link there that the Flames have been interested in this player for some time. Obviously, it doesn't really make sense from a cap perspective with everything they have going on right now, but if they move out Gaudreau, they could consider trading Gaudreau for futures and get picks and prospects in return, because their prospect pool isn't super deep. A lot of their younger players that are decent have kind of moved up and are starting to get more regular roles in the NHL already. Then they could use that newfound cap space to sign Hall. So that's certainly a possibility. Now, as far as Gaudreau moves, I mean, I saw one report suggesting maybe the Sabres should offer up the 8th overall pick and a prospect or something to consider bringing Gaudreau to Buffalo. I mean, the Sabres are certainly a team who are kind of floundering a little bit and need to find some more help for Jack Eichel. Gaudreau could be that kind of guy. I think he would fit well with the style of play. So that's a consideration. We've heard a lot of talk about the Sabres since they didn't really do well in the draft lottery, that they should consider taking that 8th overall pick. and trading the pick for a player that can help immediately, since this Sabres team desperately needs to take steps forward instead of waiting 2, 3, 4 years for that player to really develop into a top line player. So that's a possibility we could see. Buffalo makes a lot of sense. Of course, New Jersey, they have a lot of young players. They have the cap to take on the contract like Gaudreau. They have some younger pieces that could consider to be moved or draft picks to maybe make a Flames deal work for them as well. Of course, I know there's been a lot of link over the years from Gaudreau to the Flyers. I'm not really sure that makes a lot of sense. Flyers are a pretty stacked team, making it to the Final Four in the Eastern Conference. I don't really see them needing to add a big time player like Gaudreau. If they were going to do that, it would have had to have happened a while ago. But the other big thing here for the Flames too is that they are probably going to have a difficult time signing Gaudreau when he's a free agent in 2 years' time. Now could be the time, by a variety of reasons, not just the fact that they haven't had the playoff success to make a move, but if they're going to have a hard time signing him, a team is probably willing to pay more now, where they have 2 cracks with him in their lineup to make the postseason, have a run out of Stanley Cup here. So clearly, I think a Johnny Gaudreau trade is inevitable. It seems like it's a highly likely thing we could see this offseason. Free agency now and trade market is about 6-7 weeks away from really opening up. And could the Flames be a team that makes a big splash here and trade Gaudreau, sign Hall? Certainly something that seems more and more likely with all the different reports we're seeing. Of course, the Flames have many other things that they need to factor in here as well, including their head coach. I mean, Jeff Ward's been interim head coach since November. That's a long stretch of time, obviously, after they had to move on from Bill Peters after everything that happened in that situation. I understand in the beginning making him interim, but they've seen enough now to decide either he's the guy or he's not. Of course, like we mentioned with the other teams that we talked about today, including the Capitals and the Seattle franchise is going to be looking for a coach. The Flames have a lot of experienced guys out there who they could consider bringing on board as the head coach, so that's going to make it maybe a little tougher for a guy like Ward to hang on to that job. So we're going to have to see what they decide in that respect. Of course, like I mentioned before, they need to solidify their goaltending situation. Is Riddick the guy? They're going to bring back Talbot. They're going to make another move to bring in somebody else. There's lots of free agent netminders out there that could fit the bill as well. The blue line has numerous free agents, including Hamonic and Brody and Forbort and Gustafson. Like, obviously Gino Dano's only got 1 more year. They got Rasmus Anderson, who's pretty solid young D, taking big strides. But clearly that Flames blue line has a lot of question marks as well. So Calgary could be a team, I think, who could be extremely active. Like as I mentioned before, I think Brad Treliving is certainly starting to feel some pressure. He's at 6 years in now without any real sustained, improvements, especially playoff success, which is what matters most. So if he doesn't make some big moves this year and really take some strides forward in the next year or so, I think his job is in jeopardy too. So I think we'll see a very active Flames team with a variety of moves that could really shake up this roster this season. So let me know what moves you think the Flames are going to make, what makes sense for them. Could they sign Taylor Hall? Could they trade Johnny Gaudreau? How their blue line is going to be, looking different next year? Who's going to be the starting netminder? There's so many questions with this team. Certainly lots of things to consider. So leave me your comments down below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.